Hello and welcome to Narayana IS. Now, Narayana IS is an institute that helps you to prepare UPSC examination right at a very young age, that is right after 10th standard, so that before you complete your graduation, you are all prepared to give the UPSC examination, right? So, let me introduce myself. I am Pratik, your faculty for daily news analysis. Students, in today's session, we'll be discussing 5 most important topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. So let's have a quick brief about the topics that we shall be discussing in today's daily news analysis. So these are the 5 topics that we shall be discussing in today's DNA. The first article talks about Aligarh Muslim University. It talks about the recent Supreme Court judgment on AMU, and in this article we shall be focusing more on Article 30, right? The second article talks about India's textile sector and how the government can help the textile sector to increase exports to the world. The third article talks about a report by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, which reports certain lacunas in resource allocation to the urban local bodies established under the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. The fourth article talks about the role of Narcotics Control Bureau and the Indian Navy that apprehended a ship that was smuggling illegal drugs, right? And the fifth article talks about the Conference of Parties meeting being held at Azerbaijan, Baku. The fifth topic we already had covered in yesterday's daily news analysis, right? So if you want to know more about the fifth topic, please refer to yesterday's DNA. So in this DNA, we shall be focusing on the first 4 topics, right? So if you can see, this appeared in the Hindu page number 6, this one Hindu page number 8, this one we took from Indian Express, this one we took from Hindu again page number 10, the last we have taken from Indian Express page number 8. So let us start with the first article. What is the title of the first topic? Universities are different from religious institutions, right? So in this article, we shall be discussing about Article 30 and the recent Supreme Court judgment on the Aligarh Muslim University's minority status. And this topic you can map under GS paper 2. In GS paper 2, we have a subtopic in the name, the Indian Constitution, historical underpinnings, basic structure, evolutions, amendments, etc. So, this was a question asked by UPSC in the year 2014. What was the question? Should the premier institutes like the IITs and IIMs be allowed to retain premier status, allowed more academic independence in designing courses, and also decide the criteria of selection of students, right? That's the reason a question on minority status or allowing the educational institutions to enjoy the minority status. A question can be asked on this nature too. That's the reason you need to have a holistic understanding about Article 30. Why Article 30? In short time, you'll understand the importance of Article 30 with respect to Aligarh Muslim University and other institutes that are seeking minority status or still enjoy minority status. So, what is the context? We know just few days back, Supreme Court gave a judgment on Aligarh Muslim University. What was the context? The Supreme Court laid broad framework, right? The Supreme Court set broad framework for Aligarh Muslim University. Now, on the basis of this broad framework, the 3-judge bench will decide whether Aligarh Muslim University should enjoy minority status or they should not. Which means the Supreme Court had overturned the 1967 judgment of Supreme Court, which means the Supreme Court in the year 1967 gave a judgment wherein the Supreme Court said that Aligarh Muslim University is not a minority status. This judgment of Supreme Court was overturned in the year 2024, where the Supreme Court laid down the broad framework through which AMU is all set to get the minority status. Okay. First and foremost, to understand this topic, it is very, very important to understand what is Article 30, right? So, what is Article 30? What is the purpose of Article 30? The purpose of Article 30 is to allow religious and linguistic minorities. Religious and linguistic minorities, this is what Article 30 Clause 1 is. Right? So, the purpose of Article 30 is mentioned in Article 30 Clause 1, which allows the minorities the right to establish which minorities? Religious as well as linguistic minorities. Very, very important to mention this term. Students often feel that Article 30 talks only about religious minorities, but the fact of the matter is Article 30 talks about religious as well as linguistic minorities. So, it allows religious and linguistic minorities to establish their educational institutions, Why? Why has the constitution allowed the minorities to establish educational institutions? So that the minorities can protect, can safeguard their culture. Culture, by culture I mean their language, culture, traditions. So this was an assurance given by the constitution makers that India is a secular country, which means people belonging to all the religions have the right to enjoy the constitutional rights, which means under Article 30 they have the right to also establish educational institutions to protect their culture. This is the purpose. Now Article 30 Clause 1A. For example, let's say if the government wants to acquire the property of minority education institution, then the government has to provide compensation, fixed compensation. This is very, very important. This compensation is fixed. It is compulsory. So, if the government wants to acquire, then in this case, the government has to give compensation to that minority institution. This is Article 30 Clause 1, right? The next part talks about localized minority protections, which means that this Article 30 allows religious and linguistic minorities. But the term minority is not country specific, it is state specific. Why? Because the Hindus are in majority in a country. But let's say the Hindus are not in majority in Jammu and Kashmir. The Hindus are not in majority in, let's say, Punjab. Right? Which means Hindus are in minority in Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir. Which means, let's say, in state like Punjab, the Hindus can establish education institution. For example, let's say when it comes to Maharashtra, let's say Christians are in minority, or let's say Uttar Pradesh where Muslims are in minority. Here the linguistic and religious minorities can establish educational institution. Am I right? Yes. Now, what is the significance of Article 30? It provides a diversity in education, which means it also allows the minorities to establish education institutions, which means there will be diversity in education. For example, talking about Aligarh Muslim University, there are courses on Urdu, Arabic. So you see that there is diversity in educational stream as well, right? At the same time, it strengthens secular framework. What is secularism? Which means the Indian state treats all religions equally. So this is an assurance given by the constitution to the minorities. By allowing the minorities to safeguard their culture, traditions, we are actually strengthening the secular framework, right? Which means we are making the secular concept, the secular principle more and more strong. Why? Because in a country where Hindus are in majority, the minorities can also be rest assured that the constitution has given us rights and these rights won't be taken away by any governments. And thus it strengthens the secular framework. Next, now see, the Supreme Court has given some very important judgments with respect to minority education institutions. Now, in all the judgments, very important, in all the judgments, the Supreme Court has balanced what? Autonomy. The Supreme Court has balanced autonomy, which means the minority, let's say, Aligarh Muslim University is a minority institution. Now, this minority institution have autonomy, which means they are free to run their own courses. They are free to appoint teachers. They are free to set the examination standard. At the same time, allowing minorities to run educational institution does not stop the state to regulate the practices of, for that matter, regulate the educational institution. Right? We'll understand why. We'll understand the term regulation more in detail. Now, the Supreme Court in the St. Stephen's College versus University of Delhi in the year 1992, right? What did the Supreme Court say? That the minorities have the rights, which means here the Supreme Court was categorical enough to say that yes, the minorities can establish educational institution, and that's the reason the Supreme Court in this judgment allowed this college to reserve 50% of seats to the students of the religion that established this particular college. Now, St. Stephen's is a minority education institution, which means that Christian is the dominant religion. This college can reserve 50% seats to the Christian students. But at the same time, the Supreme Court had set a 50% limit, which means the college cannot recruit more than 50% Christian students. Which means here the Supreme Court has balanced what? Minority rights by allowing Christianity or the college to reserve 50% Christian seats, and also to make sure that there should be equality in admissions, which means people or students from other religions should be free to seek or take admission in the college. Now, St. Stephen is a premier college in Delhi. First judgment. I hope you understood. Which means balance between the minority rights and equality in admission. The second, very important, in the TMA Pi Foundation versus State of Karnataka in the year 2002. What did the Supreme Court say? That minorities have the right to establish educational institutions, but at the same time, the state also has a right. Minorities, no doubt, they have rights. They have rights, but at the same time, the state has the power to regulate the minority education institutions. What do you mean by regulate? Which means the state can keep a control or check on the educational standard or the quality of education, which means the minority educational institutions, especially the one recognized by the state, they have to ensure that they also provide secular education, which means the institution should not only focus on religious education, it should also focus on secular education, that is the modern education, modern subjects like maths, science, philosophy, etc. This is the judgment given in, which means the point is the state can also control the minority educational institutions. Regulation, it doesn't allow the minority institutions to harass the staff, harass the teachers, harass the students, or force the non-minority students to convert to other religion. Here, the state regulates, which means the state can control. Now, in the 2005, the PA Inamdar versus State of Maharashtra case in the year 2005, the Supreme Court held that yes, the minority educational institutions have autonomy in admission and fee. Admission and fees, yes, they can decide with respect to admission. Also, they have the freedom to, decide how much fee is to be levied. But at the same time, it is important to understand that the state, for example, see, in the PA Inamdar case, what the Supreme Court say that yes, they are free to admit students. They are free to decide fee structure. At the same time, what does it mean? Okay, let's try to understand what benefits do minority educational institutions enjoy. So, if an institution is categorized as minority educational institution, which means that education institution is not bound to follow the reservation limit. For example, we have given reservation to the SCs, scheduled castes, the scheduled tribes, the OBCs. The minority education institutions are not supposed to, follow the government based quota. They can set their own examination. They can set how much fee they want to, take from the students. This is the benefits that the minority education institutions enjoy, right? So these are the three important judgments. I request you to please remember these judgments so that you can mention in the examination, right? I hope you understood the importance of all the three judgments, right? Now, AMU case. Now, AMU, it was established in the year 1887 as Muhammad Anglo-Oriental College. And who established it? Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. The purpose of AMU was to, impart modern education to the Muslims. Then this MAO was transitioned to university in the year 1920. In the year 1920, this was transitioned to university. But post-independence, in the year 1967, in the Aziz Basha versus Union of India case, in the Aziz Basha versus Union of India case, the Supreme Court said that Aligarh Muslim University is not a minority education institution. Why? Because as this AMU, as this Aligarh Muslim University got established by an act, which act? 1920. In 1920, before independence, the parliament had passed a law to create Aligarh Muslim University. So the Supreme Court said that any institution backed by a law, by a statute, does not enjoy minority status, cannot claim minority status. That's the reason in the year 1967, the Supreme Court deprived the AMU of its minority status. Now, there's a controversy with respect to the Supreme Court judgment. What was the controversy? Many people argued or criticized the Supreme Court decision. Why? Because the people who are against the judgment said that the Supreme Court has only focused on the law. The Supreme Court has not focused on the intent, the objective behind which AMU was established. And what was the object? To provide modern education to Muslims. That's the reason it was criticized and there was controversy surrounding this Aziz Basha case. Finally, in the year 2024, just few days before, the Supreme Court overturned the 1967 judgment. What did the Supreme Court say? That yes, the Supreme Court made a mistake in the year 1967 just by focusing on the law. The Supreme Court did not understand the intent behind the establishment of AMU. What was the intent objective? To impart modern education to Muslims. Right? Now, which were the important points that the Supreme Court delivered in the recent judgment? One, the Supreme Court said that though the institution is established by a minority, like Aligarh Muslim University, it is established by a minority. Still, the minority educational institutions can be categorized as institution of national importance, which means institutions of minorities can also be institution of national importance. Now, Aligarh was declared institution of national importance because of the number of courses and because of the academic excellence. Right? Here the Supreme Court said that just because the institution is administered by a minority doesn't mean that that institution cannot enjoy the status of national importance. One. The next, now here the Supreme Court adopted a holistic picture. What the Supreme Court say? That in the year 1967, the Supreme Court only focused on the law, statute that backed the establishment of AMU. Here in the year 2024, that is just few days back, the Supreme Court adopted holistic approach, which means the Supreme Court understood the intent, the objective behind the establishment of Aligarh Muslim University. Which means the Supreme Court realized, based on the documents and evidence presented to the Supreme Court, that Aligarh Muslim University in the year 1887 or 1887 was established only to impart, to give modern education to Muslims. Which means Aligarh Muslim University is a university established by the Muslim community for Muslims. And so, it has all the right to enjoy the rights under Article 30. This is what the Supreme Court said. Now, here the dissenting judge, now this judgment was 4:3. 4 judges said that Aligarh Muslim University is a minority institution. 3 judges did not concur with these 4 judges. They said that no, as Aligarh University got created because of a law, this university should not enjoy minority status. Right? At the same time, the Supreme Court also held that the minority education institutions, right? These institutions can be regulated by the state, which means if anything is going wrong in the institution, or let's say if the minority education institutions are not uh, are not following the education standard or academic standards, they have to subscribe or prescribe to academic standards. So if they are not prescribing to academic standards or quality, the state can regulate. Now what is regulate? I have already explained. This is what the Supreme Court said. So what is the broader implication of this AMU case? One, it strengthens the minority rights. As the Supreme Court has laid a broader framework, now in future course it will be easy for the Supreme Court, or let's say even the High Courts, to determine the framework based on which the High Courts or Supreme Court can declare an institution minority status or against it. Why? Because the Supreme Court has laid broader framework. Next, distinguishing universities from religious institutions. Now here, this Aligarh Muslim University, though it was established by a minority, but still Aligarh Muslim University, gives secular education. Why? Because not only religious education is taught in the university, it also focuses on modern education, secular education, broad education. That's the reason it is very important to distinguish universities from religious institutions. Religious institutions are those institutions that focuses only on religious teachings. They focus only on religious teachings, but universities like Aligarh Muslim University, they focus on secular education, right? Then the third broader implication is it reaffirms autonomy, which means yes, the minority education institution can function independently. The state won't interfere in their day-to-day affairs, but again without complete isolation, which means again they have to prescribe to some academic standards, right? They are not totally independent, totally autonomous. The state can regulate. At the same time, this one means the same, that the government can control the minority education institutions, which means this AMU case judgment of Supreme Court balances what? The minority rights, which means the minority education institutions have the right to administer their education institutions. They have autonomy. At the same time, it has balanced equality in education, which means just because that institution is established by minority, that doesn't prevent people from other religions to seek admission in the admissions or in the colleges, which means the minority institution can prescribe 50% quota for students of their religion, but the remaining 50% they have to take from other religions as well. So minority rights and equality in education. This is what the Supreme Court has balanced in this AMU case judgment. Right? So again, this Supreme Court judgment has has played a big role in preserving pluralism. India is a pluralist country, which means people belonging to different religions live in our country. Right? It supports diversity in education. It also supports inclusiveness, which means minority, again, they're part of our country, they're part of this secular framework. And yes, the Supreme Court has supported for diversity in education, at the same time promoted inclusiveness by allowing the minority the right to establish and administer education institutions. I hope you have understood the entire topic. Right? So look at this famous quote by Christopher Hitchens. The secular state is the guarantee of religious pluralism. This apparent paradox again is the simplest and most elegant of political truths. What does it mean? That only when the state is secular, which means only when the state respects and treats all religion equally, there can be religious pluralism. Which means only when the state is treating all the religions equally, people belonging to different religions can live together in peace, in harmony. So secular state is very important. Look at Pakistan. It's not a secular state. So look at the condition of minorities in Pakistan, or let's say look at what's happening to the Muslims in Myanmar, or look at what's happening to the minorities Hindus in Bangladesh or Pakistan. Which means secular state is very important. It provides a guarantee to religious pluralism. Now let us discuss a question. What is the question? Article 30 of the Indian Constitution provides religious and linguistic minorities. Discuss the significance of this provision in the context of the recent Supreme Court judgment. So this is one part of the question. This is one part of the question, right? This is another part of the question, and there's a third part. Align with India's secular framework and the promotion of cultural diversity. Now this can be a question for 15 marks, right? So 1, 2, 3. Now start the answer by introduction, wherein you mention what is Article 30 and the significance of Article 30 with respect to um, ensuring diversity in education as well as promoting inclusiveness. This is what you mention in the introduction. Now in the body of the answer you can mention the historical context. You can discuss the AMU case, right? The origin 1887, 1920, the 1967 Aziz Basha case, then the 2024 Supreme Court judgment where the Supreme Court overturned the 1967 judgment, right? And how the Supreme Court adopted holistic approach to lay broader framework, right, for the minority institutions to claim minority status, right? Then again, very important to understand is the fact that Supreme Court has balanced autonomy of the minority institutions and also balanced the state regulation, the state power of the state to control or not control, to regulate the minority institutions, right? And then you can also discuss the impact of the Aligarh Muslim University judgment on future, or let's say on other minority institutions like the St. Stephen's College of Delhi, right? And then conclusion, again highlight the significance of Article 30 and how it ensures diversity in education. The next question, India must seize the opportunity to boost textile exports, is what the Congress is saying. Though we should not focus on what the Congress is saying and Congress is not saying, but important to understand from the exam's perspective is to understand the textile sector of our country, right? So again, this topic can be mapped for both prelims as well as means. In means, we have GS paper 3 under Indian economy. We have development, employment, resource allocation, etc. So look at the previous year question asked on iron and steel industries. So this was a question asked on iron and steel industries, which means questions on industries can be asked in the UPSC examination. So what is the context? The Congress delegation, the members of Congress political party, right? They visited finance minister of a country. What did the Congress say? The Congress said that Bangladesh is in turmoil, which means there's disturbance going on in Bangladesh. We all know that, right? Now, because of this disturbance, India can actually benefit. See, just to give you a context, Bangladesh is a major player in the textile sector. Is one of the major players in the textile sector globally, right? Now, as Bangladesh is in turmoil, there's disturbance going on in Bangladesh. India can actually take benefit out of this situation, which means India can strengthen the textile sector by focusing on, exporting the textile material or textile sector. This is what the Congress, informed to the finance minister, which means the point was they requested the finance minister to focus on the textile sector so that the export of textile sector increases. This is the context. Now let us try to understand the importance of textile sector. One, when it comes to GDP, now the textile sector, it contributes 2 to 2.3% of the GDP, which means, let's say for example, if India earns 100 rupees in a year, out of 100 rupees, around 2.3 percentage the textile sector contributes to our wealth. It also contributes 7 percentage to the industrial output. So of all the output the industries give or produce, 7 percentage is from the textile sector. The next, now textile sector also provides employment. When it comes to direct employment, the people who are directly involved in the textile sector, around 45 million people are directly employed in the textile sector, and indirectly 100 million people are employed in the textile sector, which means it contributes to a GDP, wealth, it contributes to employment, it also contributes to our export. Now India exports many things to the outside world. Of all the export earnings or money that we receive, the textile sector contributes 12 to 13 percentage, which means, let's say India is exporting many things to the outside world and India gets 1000 rupees. Out of 1000 rupees, around 12 or 13 percentage of the revenue out of 1000 rupees we get from the textile sector, right? This is the importance of the textile sector to a country. Now, if I discuss about the key sectors or key segments in the textile sector, then we have the cotton textile, which is the most dominant. Cotton textile is the most dominant, which means India is the largest producer of cotton. India is the largest producer of cotton in the entire world, right? And this cotton is important for both domestic consumption as well as export to other countries, right? The first one is cotton textile. The other one is technical textile. What is technical textile? And this textile segment focuses on professions. For example, the uniforms used in the construction, in construction industry, is a particular uniform that the construction people or the people employed or are part of construction sector have to wear, or let's say healthcare, or let's say automobile, right? So there's a particular type of uniform or dress for a particular sector, right? So this technical textile industry focuses on making such textiles important or required for professions like automobile, healthcare, hospitals, or for that matter construction. Then we have man-made fibers. For example, there's high demand of synthetic fiber. Synthetic fiber, isn't it? Then we have silk and wool. Again, India is the largest producer of silk in the world and ninth largest producer of wool in the world, right? Then we have handloom and handicrafts. So what is the difference between handloom and handicrafts? Now loom is a machine, right? So I hope you must have seen the machine on which the saris are made. So right, that is handloom. And then handicrafts, by using hand, movements in India's textile sector. If we discuss about the geographical distribution of the textile sector, then if I talk about Gujarat, now Gujarat is famous for its cotton textiles, especially in cities like Ahmedabad and Surat. Then we have Tamil Nadu. Now Tamil Nadu is famous for spinning mills and manufacturing, especially in cities like Coimbatore. Then we have Maharashtra. Maharashtra is very famous for cotton production, especially in cities like Solapur and Mumbai. Then West Bengal, again the whole world knows that it is famous for jute and jute textile. and then followed by we have Rajasthan, which is famous for wool and hand printed textile. Now the major cities in Rajasthan are Jaipur and Udaipur, right? So these are the geographical distribution of the textile sector in our country. This again, all points are very important for your prelims examination, right? Now, these are some of the initiatives introduced by the government of India to boost export in the textile sector. For example, the first one is production linked incentive scheme. Production linked incentive scheme. Now, what is a scheme? Now, this scheme incentivizes the companies to manufacture domestically. So, any company that is manufacturing domestically, providing more jobs, exporting more, more quantity, they get certain incentives from the government. So, you perform and you get tax rebates from government. Government will help you. The next one is National Technical Textile Mission. Now, this mission intends to make India a global player in the textile sector. The next one is PM Mitra, PM Pradhan Mantri Mitra Parks. Now, these parks are the parks where world class infrastructure will be provided by the government for the people involved in the textile sector. Then we have Samartha Skill Development Program, where the skills required in the textile sector are provided to the youths of our country, right? So these are some of the schemes introduced by the government to export or to enhance the export in the textile sector and help our country grow in the textile sector, right? So these are the schemes that you need to remember. I hope you understood the second topic as well. And again, what is the future prospect? That India wants that by the friendly methods. Now, first statement, India is the world's largest producer of cotton, which plays a critical role in both domestic consumption and export. Students, if you want to, attempt questions, then please check in the comment box that we have provided, right? Links for DNA notes as well as quiz in the comment section. So I request you to attempt the questions by clicking the link given in the comment section, right? This link will take you to the website wherein you can attempt the questions on our website and assess your performance. At the same time, if you are not interested to write down the notes, we have also provided you the DNA notes in the comment section, wherein you click the DNA notes link. That link will take you to the page where you will find all the articles that we shall be discussing today, right? So the first one, so I request you to, try to attempt the question by your own and then come back and watch the video. So first statement, India is the largest producer of cotton, which plays a critical role. Yes, this one is correct. Man-made fiber make less than 5% of India's textile market due to limited global demand for synthetic fiber. This is incorrect. Why? Because there is growing demand for synthetic fiber. The handloom sector in India employs over 4 million weavers and contributes significantly to rural development. Yes, this statement is also correct, which means option 1 and 3 has to be the correct answer for this particular question. Now let us focus on the next topic. Now this topic, talks about Narcotics Control Bureau. It talks about Operation Sagar-Manthan, as well as it talks about an addictive drug that is very harmful to human beings, right? So this topic can be understood from the security perspective, right? Now, what is the context? Now, recently, the Narcotics Control Bureau, we'll understand what is Narcotics Control Bureau, in association by coordinating with the Indian Navy and Gujarat's anti-terrorism squad, right? These organizations came together to apprehend, to arrest a ship that was carrying drugs. They seized, that is, they captured who? The Narcotics Control Bureau. They captured 700 kgs with Indian Navy as well as Gujarat's ATS. They captured 700 kgs of methamphetamine, and this was done under Operation Sagar-Manthan, right? This shows how the Narcotics Control Bureau or different organizations, different law enforcement agencies are coming together to fight against the illegal crimes, right? First and foremost, let us try to understand what is methamphetamine. One, it is a highly potent, highly addictive stimulant, which means it's a drug. It's a drug which directly affects your nervous system, right? It's stimulant. By taking it, immediately it hits your nervous system. Now, this drug is also used in the medical field. For example, in order to treat obesity or for that matter, attention deficit disorder, this drug is administered by the doctors. Now, if you use this drug, or if you abuse this drug, if you are taking it illegally, right? If you take it illegally, it will lead to euphoria, euphoria, a trance state where people take drugs, or let's say people smoke or drink. Why? Because to go into euphoria. Euphoria is a state of extreme happiness, extreme emotions, but it has also got some very, very harmful effects on your body. It can affect your brain, right? So as this one is it's a addiction, it's an addictive, it's a stimulant, it directly hits your nervous system, and that's the reason there's a high demand for this particular drug. Now, what is Operation Sagar-Manthan? See, Operation Sagar-Manthan, right? The operation of this operation, the operation or the objective of this operation is, so this one is a marine anti narcotic operation. Marine, that is on the sea, water, anti narcotic is drugs, which means under this Operation Sagar Manthan, these security officials, they combat drug trafficking. See, this is India and this is the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, right? So using the water route, the drugs are smuggled, that is transported from one region to another region, right? And that's the reason under Sagar Manthan, the Indian Navy keeps a watch on the waters on the Indian Ocean to see if people are involved in drug trafficking. I hope this point is clear, right? So if you see countries like Maldives, Seychelles, Comoros, Madagascar, Mauritius, all these countries are, in association with our country India, are fighting against drug trafficking, right? For example, if you see here, drugs are smuggled from this part to this part and this part to this part using the water route. And that's the reason our Indian Navy keeps a watch on such ships that carries drugs from one part of the region to another part of the region. So what happens? So for example, let's say if these drugs are reached or lands in a country, what happens is that people will take this drug and this will affect the body of the people, right? That's the reason the Indian government has to ensure that such illegal drugs do not land on our country. So, what is Narcotics Control Bureau? I hope you understood about the drug, what is Operation Sagar-Manthan. Now we'll understand what is Narcotics Control Bureau. See, Narcotics Control Bureau was established in the year 1985 under the Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. This was created in the year 1985. What is the purpose? Purpose is to combat drug trafficking. What? Drug trafficking. So, Narcotics Control Bureau is a their primary job is Drug Law Enforcement Agency. Drug Law Enforcement Agency. Their primary job, their most important job is to ensure that drugs are not smuggled illegally. They are fighting against drug trafficking. They, arrest people who are involved in illegal use of drugs. They are, they work to make India nasha mukt. So anyone who is using drugs illegally, for example, few days back or let's say few months back, Shah Rukh Khan's son was involved in, a drugs case, and Narcotics Control Bureau institution was in the news. Why? Because, a certain person was using the drugs illegally, right? And it also gathers intelligence related to smuggling of drugs, that is illegally transporting drugs from one country or one part to the other. And the Narcotics Control Bureau, it works under the administrative control of Ministry of Home Affairs. Very, very important point for your prelim. Headquarter is in Delhi. So all these points are very, very important for your prelims. So I hope you understood the topic. So in this article, we understood what is the drug. Second one, what is Operation Sagar-Manthan. The third one is what is Narcotics Control Bureau. And what are the key responsibilities to combat drug trafficking? This is what we discussed. Then it coordinates with state government and other authorities like the Indian Navy. Then international cooperation. It also works with other countries. Then assistance to foreign law enforcement agency. So it also works with foreign countries to ensure that in a coordinate manner we fight against the drug trafficking, right? The last topic of the day is a report by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. So this topic is important for both prelims as well as mains. Prelims and mains GS paper 2. We have this subtopic wherein you can map this particular topic that we have taken from Indian Express. Now, see, a previous question was asked on CAG. So many questions have been asked on CAG in the UPSC examination. So this topic is very, very, very important, especially from prelims perspective. Now, what is the context? The Comptroller and Auditor General of India reported that there is 40% resource gaps in the urban local bodies. What does it mean? Of all the resources, now which are the urban local bodies? We have the municipal corporation, we have the municipal council, nagar, parishad, panchayat. These are urban local bodies. The CAC said that of all the resources required by the urban local bodies, there is 42% resource gap, which means, let's say if the corporation has asked for 100 things, they only got 58 and 42% things they did not get. At the same time, of the resources they have, who? The urban local bodies, there is limited development spending, which means of all the money they have, they do not spend it completely or entirely. Why? Because they do not have staff, there's vacancy pending. This is what the CAC has reported. First and foremost, we'll understand what is, or let's try to understand more what the Comptroller and Auditor General has to say. The CAC said that only 32% of the urban local bodies' revenue was self-generated, which means of all the sources through which they generate revenue, only 32 percentage, right, which means out of 100, 32 percentage they generate through their own sources. Rest of the money is given by the state government and the central government. Next, the urban local bodies have achieved 56 percentage of their property tax collection target. So every urban local body has a target. Now property tax is very important in cities like, let's say, all the metropolitan cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Calcutta, Hyderabad, Chennai. So for the urban local bodies, property tax constitutes a very important source for revenue generation, which means of their target they could only collect 56%, which is a very bad number. Next, only 29% of the urban body expenditure went towards development work. So of all the money, right, they have to spend, they utilize 29% only for developmental work. Rest of the money, went in, let's say, paying salaries, or let's say some money must have been wasted on corruption as well. Then there was a 37% average staff vacancy, which means there are still vacancies in the urban local body. If you do not have people to work, how can you expect development from urban local bodies is a question. So this is what the CAG had reported with respect to urban local bodies. Now you can quote few data in the mains examination. This is very important. So whenever Election Commission of India, CAG, CBI, right, whenever they issue a report, please try to keep a note of this report and try to mention this report in the examination. If you mention such data in the examination, trust me, in comparison with your competitors, you will get one extra mark for that particular answer. So getting 0.5 or 1 mark extra in every answer will make a whole lot of difference in the overall score. That's the reason mentioning data, mentioning reports, mentioning facts, mentioning Supreme Court judgment, important cases is very important. So what is Comptroller and Auditor General? See, CAG is established under Article 148. What is the purpose of CAG? What is the purpose of CAG? It audits. It audits the finances of the government. Finances of the government, which means, let's say, we have the central government, we have the state government. Now this CAG will see if the money is spent for the right purpose. It audits finances of the government, which means, let's say, for example, the central government spends money for many things, for development, for salaries, the state government spends. Now here the Comptroller and Auditor General of India will see if this money is spent for the right purpose. The CAG is appointed by the President of India and the tenure is either 6 years or 62 age. This CAG, it audits the union and state government receipts and expenditure. What is receipt? The money they receive. Expenditure is the money that they spend, right? So CAG audits both the union, central as well as state governments receipts and expenditure. It also submits the audit reports to President and Governor. Let's say, for example, the CAG has audited the union government's finances. Now the CAG will make a report. The CAG will submit it to the president. Now the president will submit or lay this report before the parliament. Let's say, for example, CAG has audited the finances of Maharashtra government. Now this CAG will submit the report to the Maharashtra governor, and this Maharashtra governor will lay the report before the Maharashtra assembly. It verifies the government spending aligns with legislative intent. Now see, whenever the government wants to spend money, the government has to take the permission from the legislature, that is parliament and assembly. I hope in polity you must have studied appropriation bill. Only when the appropriation bill gets passed, the government can spend money, right? So here the CAG will see that the money that the government is spending is in alignment with the legislative intent, which means, let's say for example, the parliament has allowed the Ministry of Home Affairs to spend 20,000 crore. So the CAG will see if the Ministry of Home Affairs has spent 20,000 crore or it has spent more or less. If more, why? If less, why? And then it also conducts performance and special audits. What is special audit? Which means the CAG will also try to understand or will try to evaluate or assess the wisdom of the expenditure. For example, let's say if the government has spent, let's say 10,000 crore on Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Now here the CAG will see if 10,000 crore was required to spend on Swachh Bharat mission, and did the expenditure achieve the objective or purpose of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan? Which means the CAG also tries to understand the wisdom behind the expenditure. This is special audit, right? See here, the most important challenge or the biggest gap in the audit of the Comptroller and Auditor General is that the CAG only audits when the money is spent. See, in India, the CAG actually does the role of auditor. The CAG in a country doesn't do the job of Comptroller. What is Comptroller? Now, the government will decide how much money is to be spent for, let's say, Ministry of Home Affairs, Army, Navy, etc. etc. The CAG has no role to give suggestions, advice as in how much money to be spent for this particular scheme. The CAG has a job to do only once the money is spent, which means the CAG in our country only audits. It doesn't do the job of a comptroller as it does in UK. In UK, the CAG does both the job of a comptroller and auditor. The next, what is 74th Constitutional Amendment Act? See, this act was enacted in the year 1992. Why? To empower the urban local bodies. See, until 1992, we had the central government, the state government. We did not have local governments. Now, who will solve the local problems of a city or let's say of a village? That's the reason in the year 1992, we established urban local bodies. So, in 1992, we established both urban local bodies as well as rural local bodies. Urban local bodies like the municipal corporation, municipal council, then Nagar Parishad, then rural local bodies like Zilla Parishad, Panchayat Samiti, Gram Panchayat. This is referred to as local governance bodies both. This was enacted in the year 1992. Why? To give power to the urban people, to the local people. Right? Three types of urban local bodies. Which are these? These are three types of urban local bodies. What was the purpose? To give the power in the hands of local people. The idea was the problems of local people cannot be understood by the people sitting in parliament or sitting in the capital of every state. That's the reason we created urban local bodies, or we created local bodies wherein we gave power in the hands of the local people to decide for their own development, social development, political development, economic development. Urban local body is responsible for urban planning. This is responsible for rural planning, rural development, urban development. Then this particular law also makes every state government to appoint state finance commission. Now what this state finance commission does is it allocates resources to the urban local bodies and the rural local body. Rural local bodies. See, you can enjoy power only if you have money, resources. If you do not have resources, what's the point of power? There's a reason under this act, every state should appoint a state finance commission to allocate resources to the local bodies like urban local bodies and rural local bodies. Then we also have district and metropolitan planning committee. Now this committee is responsible for coordination of urban development and rural development. So it acts as a bridge between the urban places and the rural places. These are the provisions under 74th Constitutional Amendment. Now the urban local bodies, for example, these are the subjects on which the urban local bodies like municipal corporation, they work, they make laws, they make policies. For example, urban planning, land use, water supply, sewage. This is what the municipality does. Municipality is a common term for urban local bodies. If the city is big, we have corporation. In city like Hyderabad, we have corporation. In smaller cities, we have council. So I hope you have understood the topic. Now, if we discuss a question, the 74th Act of 1992 empowered the urban local bodies in India by providing decentralized governance framework. Right? Which of the following statements about the provisions and functions of urban local bodies are correct? The 12th schedule, 11th schedule talks about, the rural local bodies of the constitution defines 18 functional items assigned to urban local bodies. The 74th amendment mandates the establishment of this to coordinate urban and rural development planning and district. Yes, both the statements are correct. Very simple question, right? I hope you refer to the DNA notes to read the entire content and then try to attempt the questions. And then finally, students, we have the fifth topic. Taken from Indian Express, which we already have covered yesterday in the DNA of 15th November. This was the topic that we covered yesterday. The link of this topic is also mentioned in the comment box. So I request you to please open the link and try to read out the content, as well as if you want to understand the content, we also have the video link of this particular topic in the comment box. So students, that's it from today's daily news analysis. I hope you enjoyed watching our DNA session. And before I wind up, I request you to please hit the like, share and subscribe button and support our initiative or effort that we put behind daily news analysis. Thank you so much for watching.